morning.
Morning.
So there's two primary fears of every young baby. Nate, did you know that? Did you know that? What are the two fears that every baby has?
Falling.
That is it. Falling. And what else?
Oh, starving. Being alone.
Wait, what did someone say?
Starving, not eating.
No,
Abandonment.
no, you are like born, they are born with these two fears.
Really?
They're the only two fears that they can identify in a young child or an infant. Pardon?
They don't know where they are. Like,
No, I'm talking an infant, like they, let's just say they're out of the, barely out of the womb, like,
falling and breath.
Fear of
Did-
not being.
did someone say this? If I heard, I did, loud, maybe you weren't loud enough.
Loud.
Loud noises.
Oh,
So those are the two fears. Guess what about every other fear is? It's something you what?
learn.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. And that is what you learn. You learn besides falling and loud noises. Those are the, in fact, I actually have to tell you, Jennifer, I had to do a fact check on that because I didn't believe it when I heard it.
Huh.
So I did. And guess what?
And you confirmed it.
And I have confirmed according to Google. Yeah, and of course, it's true. It's on the internet. But anyway, those are the two that are there. And it's interesting because every other fear that you guys learn, I learned, is something that we have learned because of either our culture, our environment, friends, family, loved ones, people who are who are wanting to take care of us, wanting to do good for us. But these two, the falling and the loud noises, are the only two fears that you have when you were born. And if that's the case, then the question is what fears possibly could be controlling your life today? And what is it that you're hearing inside of yourself that's channeling some level of fear, a story, a possibility of death, to destruction, to the market, to you name it? And I was, I had the privilege yesterday. It was, as you know, quite windy. Did you figure that out, Quinn? Yesterday was windy. And I was in an airplane coming into the valley with my family, and we were on Delta Airlines, and you're coming up over the Ochre Shadow or Ochre Mountains. And as I'm coming up over them, it is, last year I was on a plane, Rick, 121 times. So I have a perspective, Nathan, to flying. And I have to tell you, it was probably in the top 5 of turbulence for me. I mean, it was pretty good. Well, I was the 4th row from the front. But my two sons were literally with the bathroom, and there they were at the very, very back. At the very, very back. And so we got off the plane. I could not actually help laughing just a little bit because I couldn't stop. I'm still laughing now about it because I'm watching my son Isaac, and you could just tell he was mortified coming off the plane. Whereas Ethan, my other son, was laughing about it and was entertained fully by my son white knuckling, the armchair and the armrest and the whole thing. And I was just annoyed because I couldn't get comfortably through my Peaky Blinders series. If you haven't watched that, you probably shouldn't, unless you like lots of violence, then you should. All right, there you go. Okay, so with that, I just, when I was standing, as I was sitting there, we were walking, everyone had got off the plane. Of course, everyone wants to go to the bathroom real quick. So we're waiting there, and Isaac's there, and I said, hey, so you say that you do meditation, you say that you work on all this different stuff, and he'll talk about how sometimes he's just so anxious. And I said, well, you realize that again is a choice, what you choose to be anxious on. And of course, as that 19-year-old, he loves to roll his eyes and tell me I'm completely ridiculous. But I just want to remind you that when you're in this business, when you start looking at the things you have to do in this business, the things that seem to be the things that we learn to be fearful of, right? We learn to be fearful of rejection. We learn to feel, we learn to, what to avoid. We learn what's painful. We learn what to not do, or what we should do to avoid all types of pain. And the thing is that you have two things. You have this limbic system inside of you, and you have this prefrontal lobe also inside of you. And the two things are interesting. The limbic system is there to say, hey, it's screaming at you that, hey, I'm here to protect you. And then your prefrontal lobe, right, is right here, which, you know, they talk about us and dolphins and chimpanzees and a handful of mammals on this earth and whatnot that actually have the ability to think, right? That prefrontal lobe. And so the thing that I want you just to pay attention to is, you know, what's running your life? Is it that prefrontal lobe? And you may say, man, why are we talking so much about this? Well, the thing is that there is some level of science to it. You sit there and, you know, this limbic system is saying danger, 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 just like I think I was talking about at base camp just a few days ago or a week or two ago. And then on the same side is you have the ability to analyze, to negotiate, and have a choice to focus on whatever you want to focus on. And so the easiest example of this is what direction do geese fly in the winter? South. Do you think they have a conversation with themselves that goes something like this? I don't know. Maybe we should go north this year. I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe east seems a little bit better this year instead of going south. What do? They go south. And do they have a conversation with themselves about it? No, unless you're Charleston Living Seagull, right? If you read that little book, he starts analyzing his life and starts saying, hey, I can fly higher and higher. If you haven't read that book, it's a fun little book. But my point is that you have the right, because of your ability to think, to focus on whatever you choose to focus on. When all of a sudden, when you realize, wait a second here, my limbic system is there to protect me. It's like, you know, scary, scary, monster, unknown. Oh my gosh, the plane is going to go down. Oh my gosh, I'm not used to have it shake this much. You can come over here and say, wait a second here, but I can focus on whatever I want to focus on. So as many flights as I've been on over these many years, the thing that I always say to myself is the plane was built to do that. And I just keep doing what I'm doing. If all of a sudden I go to just a moment of fear, I say the plane's built to do that. It's all good. And so I choose to focus on something different no matter what the situation is. Whereas some of us will pay so close attention to what our limbic system's saying, which is don't make the calls, don't knock the doors. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know you're going to say. What if they ask you something you don't know? What if you get rejected? What if it's really painful? What if it's really dangerous? Well, the reality is when you start looking at that, you start to realize, wait a second here, I have a choice in every single thing that I do throughout my life. And the thing that no one's ever taken away from you is the choice to choose what you focus on. And once all of a sudden you realize that you have a choice to focus on whatever you want to focus on, and it's your choice, then all of a sudden you sit there and go, well, wait a second here. If I am at least willing to acknowledge that I'm in charge, well, when I feel all of this anxiousness, and whether it's depression or stress or the call reluctance or the avoidance, whatever you want to say it is, at the end of the day, it's fear, right? What you hate doing, what you enjoy, what you won't do, what you will do, what you won't do is almost always because of the fear. Now, sometimes that's the right thing. When you have fear of doing heroin, that's a good sign, right? And that you sit back and go, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea, right? But if all of a sudden it's, wait, you're supposed to make calls and your limbic system goes, no, you got lots of emails to return. Oh no, you got to work on that deal. Oh no, all of a sudden you start to realize that sometimes this limbic system, as much as it's wired to protect you, it actually is hurting you. So get really conscious. And here's the deal. It's all about becoming conscious, right? That's all that it's about. It's your ability to be aware. It's your ability to say, wait a second here. What am I thinking about? Wait a second here. What am I saying to myself? Wait, hold on a second here. You mean I have a choice? Yes, you do. You always have a choice. So if you have a choice, then the question is this: what would you do? What would you do if you had a choice? Since you have a complete choice, what would you do? Would you show up and would you make the calls? And if you could make the calls, could you do it where you're in what maybe a Tony Robbins might say? I often say stay in the light, but let's just say this, a beautiful state. Is it possible? The answer is, of course it is. Is it possible that you knock doors? Is it possible that you call your SOI? Is it possible that you go on and give presentations? Is it possible that even with this transitional market, that you get a reduction of price or ask for it and it's all going to be okay? The answer is it's all going to be okay. So when you start looking at this whole thing, you start recognizing, wait a second, I have a choice. Okay, now what would I want, or what do I do? Okay, wait a second here. And what if I was just to, for a moment, you guys heard me talk about this not too long ago at a summit, but what if you were to trust just a little bit? What if you were to trust yourself that it's possible? What if you were able to trust a few people around you? What if you're able to trust the journey? And what if you were able to just trust your creator, that this universe and everything within it has been created so that you can achieve and have everything you want? And what if all of a sudden the language and the story and the words that you use were all about, this is what I choose, this is what I want to do or have, and all of a sudden I'm going to trust this, and I'm going to start crafting a story, right? A message within myself that says I can have whatever I want. All of a sudden you start realizing, wait a second, I have a choice. I can focus on whatever I want. Okay, what do I choose to do? Okay, I'm going to trust that this is going to unfold for me. And by the way, what's the story that I'm going to tell myself? Right? The story is when the plane is shaking. Oh yeah, it's for sure going down. Everyone scream and panic. It's going down. Right? I mean, that's the thing, that you have a choice. You have a choice every single day to trust what you choose to trust, tell the story to yourself. The story is the message, right? It's the language that we use, what you can or can't do, what's possible or not possible, what you believe you should do or can do or want to do. It's the story you tell yourself. I've said this for years, which is, so many of us need to divorce our old story and marry a new one. So what is the story? The story is the limiting beliefs. The story is the power of your beliefs. The story is everything within you that you tell yourself. When all of a sudden you start to realize that, hold on a second here, my brain's going to try to protect me. Oh, wait a second here, but I can reason with myself. I can negotiate with myself. Oh, wait, you mean I have a choice to focus on whatever I want to focus on? Oh, you mean then if I know that, then I can do whatever I want to do, have whatever I want to have, achieve whatever I want to achieve. Oh, and if I trusted the process, that might just make it easier. And oh, I'm going to tell myself a really powerful and compelling message and story as I prospect. All of a sudden, when you start to realize the weave of that, you start to recognize that, again, there's no door you can't knock on. Your sphere, a past client, give a presentation to a buyer or seller, or to redirect your entire focus point and get reductions of price like people are having to do right now. Anybody had to get a price reduction yet? Yeah. All right. Okay, just a thought. Who has a listing? I was saying this, but I just wanted as a reminder, just a quick thought. Or actually, any thoughts on that? I'm going to completely switch gears. Please.
I love all of this because it's a reminder. If we can negotiate ourselves out of the things that we need to do, we can also negotiate ourselves into doing what we need to do. Like if you do a quick check where if you have all of that fear and you're like, no, but these are my goals. That's why having your goals written down is so important. And saying, this is why I do this. So it's okay. If you talk yourself, you have to be your biggest cheerleader. And then if not, find someone to hold you accountable and be your cheerleader for you. It's really important.
Yeah, spot on.
I'm here if you guys want me to hold you accountable.
That's right.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. I just want to make sure as a reminder, I just want to remind people the strategy of pricing. I was with an agent last week and they said, I just can't understand why my home isn't selling. Do you know what I said, Jennifer? It's because it's overpriced. And they said, no, I don't think it is. Yes, it is. And I said, unless there's something wrong on the MLS and it's not showing up properly and there's mistakes or something like that. No, it's perfect. Okay, then it's overpriced. And I gave an example, and this was the example I gave. And I just want to remind you, and you might take some notes on this, because I don't care what the market's doing, because this is the truth. And it works every single time. I just want to remind you of this. And just a couple of side notes of beliefs. Number one is the market will never let a home go underpriced or overpriced, ever, as long as it's on the market long enough. And I say long enough, 3 to 7 days. Anytime beyond that, no home. The market will never allow it to underpriced or overpriced. Remember that. So if it's overpriced, you won't get an offer, or if you do, you'll get a lowball offer. If it's underpriced, the price will be driven up. But either way, the market will never allow the market will never allow the price to, or the home to go underpriced or overpriced. The market is the market. Second, stop taking responsibility for the market. That was the other thing that started happening last week with a handful of agents is they started taking They started taking responsibility for the market, meaning, oh my gosh, I told him it was going to sell for this price, but oh gosh, but it didn't. Well, what on earth are you promising a price for? Who are you? That'd be like saying, I'm going to promise you that what's going to happen in the stock market. I'm going to promise you what happens in Bitcoin. I'm going to promise you what happens in real estate. What's wrong with you if you're doing that? You should never take responsibility for the market. So the question then is where can you have your confidence? If you don't set the price of the market, if you're not responsible for the market, then what can you have confidence in? Well, just as a reminder, you can have a confidence in the strategy. Some of you have heard this, but the strategy of pricing. And in today's market, you better be talking about it, because if you don't, you're going to have some major problems. But just as a reminder that when you're with any listing, and if this happens and you have no offers, and guys, people always ask me, where did you get that? Well, when only 1 out of every 10 homes was selling in 2008, and I was carrying 55 active, or 57 is what I got to, but I basically was carrying over 50 plus listings a month or at all times so that I could get 1 out of every 10 homes to sell. I realized that this was the only thing that matters. And I give you an example that I have an agent who was working with me on a home down in St. George. The home was listed for 1.2 million. Guess what? There were no offers. There were no showings. And of course, and then we should say that 2 to 3 weeks has gone by. Guys, that may seem so simple, but if you do not say that and explain that over and over again, that is a major problem to your clientele. Second, though, let's just assume that, and if wait, hold on, or last, and if that is the case, you're 7 to 10% overpriced. And you need to tell them that when you list it, that if we don't get an offer on this home, and we have no showings and no offers, and 2 to 3 weeks have gone by, you are at least 7 to 10% overpriced. So what was really interesting is this $1.2 million home had this exact scenario. No offers, no showings, 2 to 3 weeks gone by, I said 7 to 10%. So they reduced it a solid 10%. Then what was interesting is that they reduced it 10%. Then all of a sudden they started getting showings, but no offers. So all of a sudden, again, no offers. Oops. Let's just put here a better order. 2 to 3 weeks going by. It was actually 2 weeks in this scenario. And after 2 weeks, they had some showings. And what are some showings? 3 to 5 per week. And they were averaging on that $1 million home. So they went from 1.2 to $9 million or $995,000. So again, 2 weeks goes by, no offers, some showings, 3 to 5 per week, basically 1 per day, 5 to 7% overpriced. And guys, just as a reminder, this works every single time. All homes will sell within 5% of their list price. So don't waste anybody's time by reducing a home by 3%. You're doing yourself and you're doing your client a disservice. It's going to sell, it's going to sell within 5%. It's proven every single day to show it. Go look at the MLS. Go look at every single time. Once that price is right, it sells within 5%. You may say, well, it sells within 3, possibly. But the thing is again, going back to number 1, the market will never allow the home to go underpriced or overpriced. So get really clear on this. This is something you should be sharing with every single time you take a listing as to how you're going to price a home. And if there is, and then by the way, that home now is under contract. She reduced it again after off of the $995,000. They reduced it 5%, and now it's under contract. And she came to me and said, I can't believe it sold. I'm like, you shouldn't be, because it's just a strategy. And I'm telling you, look, this is going to become a reality for a lot of people right now. And if you don't explain this every single time to a client when you're listing a home, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of problems when you're listing these homes. Because you're gonna have a lot of angry people and you're gonna be asking yourself, I can't believe it's not selling. Now, one side note, as you're doing your CMAs, we'll wrap up here, but I just want to point out, there's markets that go up, there's markets that go down, there's markets that are flat, and there's markets that transition. Those are your 4 types of markets. What type of market are we in right now? Yeah, it's the hardest one. So in markets that are transitioning where the clients and the potential sellers don't know, when you're doing a market analysis, yes, you can certainly look at active listings. And you can certainly look at solds. But I would tell you that I would not give those as much credence right now as I would an under contract. There's a day back in 08, 9, and 10 where appraisers had to include under contracts. One, because there wasn't enough sales, but it was the indication that they knew that any home that went under contract sold within 3 to 5% of its list price. So when you're doing your analysis and you start saying, people say, well, yeah, but this one sold, or yeah, these guys are on the market. Stop paying attention to that and recognize that every single under contract. And even if I'm Jennifer, I'm working with a buyer, it's the same thing. I know that if I'm looking at homes that are around the area and I'm trying to analyze whether they have a good price, even if I'm working with buyers, the fact is that I want to pay attention to what's happened with under contract, because I know that a home is selling within 3 to 5% of that list price. So I don't even need to know. Just remember that. Focus on the under contracts, share the principle, the strategies of pricing, realize which market you're in, which is transitional, and then stop taking responsibility for the market. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And if you are doing these other things, prospecting, doing all these other things, it won't matter which deals happen, because enough deals will happen because you have enough opportunities. Okay, any thoughts, comments? Rick, or anything? Please, yeah.
I just wanted to add to that. It's not just about doing the CMA, it's about presenting the CMA. When it's responsibility of taking, hey, this is where you shouldn't even do that anyways. But if you're not doing CMAs consistently every week, and if their home isn't sold and you don't have something in a top, you should consistently be doing your research. Saying, hey, we need to sit down and reevaluate where we are and have the numbers speak for you. It's really important.
Yeah, just to reinforce the fact that the pricing strategy should be your strategy every time in
Every
every
time.
market. Simple.
Actually, it doesn't even matter what market we're in.
Doesn't.
It should still be presented that way.
Yep. Yep,
Just in
for
case they
sure.
don't have, there's something going on in their area. There's a property that sold within 4 days in South Jordan, but it took a month in Rose Park. So it just depends on where you are also.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I did doing alarms for 10 years and now 5 years in this. Something that the best salespeople do is manage expectations very well.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps people loving you and coming back to you, is because you've really done a good job managing those expectations.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and to that point, right? If I sit down and I list the home and I say, hey, just 1 second, Jason, hey, or may I share with you my pricing strategy? Number 1, hey, if we have no offers and 2-3 weeks have gone by and we still have no showings, just know I'm doing the exact same thing our company has done last year to sell 5,000 homes across the Wasatch Front. So it's not that we can't sell a home. The issue is that even the other, and a statement I always make, by the way, and that is the best marketing plan in the world will still not sell an overpriced property.
that's right.
So remember that. But you know what? I hope that's not the case. But number 2, Nathan, is that if we have no offers, 2-3 weeks have gone by, but here's the good news. We start to have showings. Well, then we know we're within about 5 to 7% of the price it's going to cost it to sell. Either way, we've got to pay really close attention. Now, if I call you the next week, which I probably will, and we either have no showings or we have some showings and we still have no offer, I'm going to go back to this strategy to manage the expectation, right? I'm going to future pace. So it's perfectly said. You're spot on. I just found that, you know, all of a sudden, here's the other thing. Stop. It's also anything is that agents don't seem to figure out why a home isn't selling. They want to blame it on so many other things, like, well, let's talk about the color of the carpet. Well, first of all, if this first part isn't happening, strategy one, part one. Well, first of all, if no one's seen the home, the reality is even the pictures aren't going to show the challenges of the home. The pictures are showing the best parts of the home, right? So the reality is that means it's a pure price issue. Your home is being open 20, people say, will you hold your home open? Your home is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on who knows how many different websites. So the reality is people have access to your home constantly. An open house is not going to change whether this home sells or not. The issue is great, we can do an open house. We can do a physical one, but the reality is that you still are overpriced. And having those conversations are so important right now, like never before. You've got to be honest with your people, but yes, the way you convey that. So it'd be something really important to maybe to role play just because it hasn't for a while. And then Jason, and then just one second. Jason, raise your hand.
Yeah, so on this is something if you can really understand and believe yourself and teach your clients, this is the CMA going forward. We talk about, I have agents come to me all the time and say, I'm doing another CMA on this, I'm doing another CMA on this. You need to do one CMA, figure out where you're at, and then this is your CMA moving forward. And if you believe this and you express this to your client and you help them understand what this is doing, that's what you need to do. That's where you're moving forward. That's the next step. You don't need to keep going back and doing a CMA to see if I missed something, because I hear this a lot, what you're saying, George,
Yes.
is that people they're trying to convince themselves that it's not price. And so they're like, well, maybe I did something wrong. I didn't see enough properties out there. I didn't see enough of anything. Well, the properties that are sold, those give you a starting point. That gives us a place to start. And then this is what guides us through the whole process.
Remember that. He said you don't have to do a CMA ever again. And most people think, oh, I gotta do another CMA, gotta do another CMA. What is it gonna tell you? That you're overpriced? I mean, unless you really miss something on the MLS, like there's a mistake, like all of a sudden you're supposed to be in the southeast quadrant and you're on the southwest. Well, that's a different scenario. But if the MLS being all things equal, if it's correct and right, which I'm assuming it is, then this is the only thing that matters. So please.
Oh, I just did a CMA last week, and what I did was call the agents that had 2 houses in that area under contract. And they were both so helpful. They offered their best advice to me, and it really helped
Good.
price the house. So it really worked to call the agents.
Yeah. Oftentimes they'll be very, very helpful. And as things have slowed a little bit, people are actually answering their phone or at least calling people back, which is always a good sign.
I feel like right now, this is the most critical part of the listing presentation, to have this conversation up front during the listing presentation. And if you're not good at this script, you need to practice it during role play or on your own time, video yourself, because if you don't get this right during the listing presentation and have this conversation up front as the leader that you're supposed to be, trying to have it later on is going to make your life an absolute living nightmare.
Yes,
So
it will.
have it during the listing presentation up front, get really, really good at it, so that if you have to have it a week or 2 later, it's not a big deal. You've already had the tough conversation, and it's just follow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, any other thoughts? Greg, any thoughts?
No, sir.
No words of wisdom? Have you heard this before in the last decade from me? Yeah.
One more thought.
Yes, please. And then Brentley, and then we'll wrap up.
With the active listings, I'd like to teach clients about the principle of substitution. And to help them just understand if there's something on the market you're gonna get for equal price or better for the same price, they're gonna pick that. And so we have to pay attention to what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yes.
My final words of wisdom come from a fortune cookie.
All right.
Losers focus on the penalties of failures. Winners focus on the rewards of success. And it's so true. So
It is
whenever
very
I
true.
start going sideways, I'm like, okay, what?
Are you
do I
supposed to
need
finish
do?
all those fortune cookies and under the sheets? I'm just kidding, right? You're like, what, huh? Wait,
That
just
was
kidding.
on Jay Bentley's computer one day. I've
Oh, that
shared it
quote?
many times. It's that same, he had a fortune cookie. I'm like, why do you have that taped onto your
That's awesome.
laptop? And I read it and it's so true.
It is true. Right, to your point, right? Where do you choose to focus? And it's just, guys, if you can just remember that in your life, that it's where you choose to focus. And that remember, there's only two fears that are what you come to this little earth or this planet bouncing in the middle of outer space. You come with two of them, the fear of loud voices or loud sounds and the fear of falling. And all of a sudden you start to realize, wait a second here, have I learned every other fear that I have? And the answer is yes, yes, you have. Whether it's your parents who maybe were well-intending, maybe it was your best friends, maybe it was an experience in school, maybe an experience in your home front, somewhere in your environment, you shape the life that you live based on the fears that you convince yourself of. So as much as you've convinced yourself of fearing things, I would just challenge you to take a step back and realize that you don't have anything to fear. That maybe your fears completely aren't even reality. Maybe they're just hallucinations and a great imagination. And reality is almost none of them come true, all the things that we fear. That's the other thing that's so, it's crazy about this thing, is that I started realizing all the moments of my fear is I was having such a horrible time during those moments of fear. And then so often they never came true. So if that's the case, well then, man, why am I doing what I'm doing? And why am I doing it the way that I'm doing it? If there's going to be tough moments that seem really fearful, maybe I can stay in a beautiful space. Maybe I can stay in the light. Maybe I can add gratitude to eliminate all the fear. And all of a sudden I start using tools that make it to where I get to focus on what I want to focus on instead of what I feel forced to focus on because of my stress, my anxiety, and the pressures of life. I start realizing I can be free of all that if I choose to focus on the right stuff. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, let's do some affirmations. Great to be with you guys. Let's have a great week. It's going to be a good week.